My name is Rixto, and I work as the station administrator for Meridian 7, which is honestly just a fancy way of saying I deal with everyone's problems while they pretend I do not exist. Been here for 12 cycles now. Seen everything from cargo disputes to actual diplomatic incidents involving someone's pet getting loose in the ventilation system. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened in Sector Green Level 4, at the most pretentious establishment this side of the Andromeda Gateway. Vorkal's Celestial Palette. That was the name. Stupid name if you ask me. But nobody ever does. The place had been open for maybe 8 months. And already Vorkal had made himself the most insufferable chef in 7 systems. He was a Thoraxian, which meant he had that crystalline exoskeleton that changed colors based on his mood, 4 arms that moved like they were conducting an orchestra, and an ego the size of a small moon. Every single evening, without fail, Vorkal would stand at the entrance of his restaurant wearing this ridiculous tall hat that he claimed was inspired by ancient Earth cuisine traditions. The irony of that will hit you later, trust me. He would greet customers with this booming voice that echoed through the corridors, making sure everyone within earshot knew that his establishment was open for business. "Welcome, welcome, my distinguished patrons," he would bellow, his exoskeleton shifting to a proud golden hue. "Come and experience flavors that will transcend your very understanding of sustenance. I, Chef Vorkal, master of 743 culinary arts, guarantee you a meal that will forever change your palate."
Yeah.
He talked like that, all the time. Now, here is the thing about Vorkal that made him particularly annoying. He was not just a talented chef, which he absolutely was. Damn him. No, he had this biological quirk that made him basically immune to toxins. All toxins. Any toxins. His species had evolved on a death world where everything, and I mean everything, was trying to kill everything else through chemical warfare. Plants, animals, even the water had trace amounts of substances that would drop most species in seconds. So naturally Vorkal never shut up about it. I had wandered into his restaurant one evening after a particularly brutal shift involving a Zenthuri trader who insisted his cargo of live splorch beetles was classified as non-hazardous. Spoiler alert, they were extremely hazardous. And I had spent 4 hours in decontamination. I needed a drink, maybe some food, and definitely a place to sit where nobody would ask me to fill out forms. Vorkal was in the middle of one of his speeches. There was a table of Krellian merchants, trying to enjoy their meal, and he was hovering over them like a glittering, self-satisfied storm cloud. "You see," he said, gesturing dramatically with 2 of his 4 arms while the other 2 plaited some kind of purple foam that was probably supposed to be edible. "Most chefs fear the ingredients. They treat their kitchens like laboratories, carefully measuring, cautiously tasting. But not I. I can consume anything, test any combination, because nothing, absolutely nothing, can harm me." One of the Krellians, a female with tired eyes who clearly just wanted to eat in peace, made the mistake of engaging. "Surely there must be something that could affect you, chef. The universe is vast." Oh, she should not have said that. Vorkal's exoskeleton flashed brilliant crimson, which in Thoraxian body language means extreme excitement mixed with aggressive confidence. "Nothing," he proclaimed, loud enough that every patron in the restaurant turned to look. "I have consumed Viridian ghost peppers, Plutonian nerve moss, even a sample of Zarthian venom fruit, each one capable of killing most species within minutes. And what happened to me? Nothing. Not even mild discomfort." He picked up a small vial from his preparation counter, holding it up to the light like it was some kind of holy relic. "This, my dear patron, is essence of Kragner root. 1 drop can cause complete nervous system failure in 86% of known species. Watch." And the absolute maniac just dumped the entire vial into his mouth, swallowed, and smiled. The restaurant went dead silent. Even I stopped mid-step, my drink order completely forgotten, watching to see if we were about to have a medical emergency on our hands. Vorkal stood there, arms spread wide, that stupid grin on his face. 5 seconds passed, then 10, then 20. Nothing happened. "You see," he said, turning in a slow circle to address the entire restaurant. "I am the only chef in the galaxy who can truly claim to have tasted everything. No ingredient holds secrets from me. No combination can surprise me. I am quite simply unpoisonable." Yeah, he actually used that word. Unpoisonable. The Krellian merchants clapped politely, probably hoping he would just leave them alone. Other patrons went back to their meals, used to his theatrics by this point. But I noticed something else. In the corner of the restaurant at a small table near the viewing port that looked out into the starfield sat a figure I had not seen before. Human, female, elderly by their species standards, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and these glasses that magnified her eyes slightly when she looked at you. She was wearing what I would later learn was called a cardigan, which is apparently a earth garment that grandmothers wear when they want to look harmless right before they absolutely destroy you. She was watching Vorkal with the kind of expression that in my 12 cycles of station administration experience meant someone was about to make a very big mistake. Her lips were pressed together in a thin line and she was slowly, deliberately setting down her fork. Oh boy, I thought. Here we go. The human stood up. And let me tell you, for someone who barely reached Vorkal's mid-torso, she had the presence of someone 3 times her size. She walked right up to the chef, her sensible shoes making these soft clicking sounds on the restaurant floor that somehow felt ominous. Everyone in the place was watching now, because when a human decides to approach someone with that particular walk, things are about to get interesting. Or catastrophic. Usually both. Excuse me, young man, she said, and I had to suppress a laugh because Vorkal was 47 cycles old, which was middle-aged for a Thoraxian, and nobody had ever called him young anything. Did I hear you correctly? You claim nothing can poison you. Vorkal's exoskeleton shifted to an amused orange color. He looked down at her with barely concealed condescension, which was his first mistake. His second mistake was opening his mouth. That is correct, tiny elder. My biology is superior to almost all known species when it comes to toxin resistance. Why do you ask? Do you perhaps have some quaint folk remedy from your little planet that you think might challenge me?
Oh no.
Oh no. I had dealt with enough humans on this station to know that you never ever dismiss them like that. Especially not the old ones. The old ones were dangerous. The human smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had raised 4 children, survived 2 galactic wars and had absolutely zero patience for nonsense. My name is Dottie Kowalski, she said, her voice sweet as spoiled honey. And yes, actually I do. How about a little wager, chef? I will make you 1 dish. Just 1 from my home planet. If you can eat the entire portion without any, shall we say, adverse effects, I will pay for every meal in this restaurant for the next month. But if you cannot finish it, or if it affects you in any way, you admit that perhaps you are not quite as unpoisonable as you claim. The restaurant erupted in whispers. A phosphene at the bar actually choked on his radiation cocktail. The Krellian merchants leaned forward in their seats, suddenly very interested in their meal again. Vorkal's exoskeleton flashed bright purple, which meant he was absolutely delighted by this challenge. A human dish. My dear lady, your species is known for your bland, over-salted food. I have sampled Earth cuisine before. Burgers, pizza, something called hot dogs, which contained no actual canine meat. I might add, very disappointing labeling. None of it even registered on my taste receptors as mildly challenging. Dottie's smile got wider, scarier. Oh, sweetie. You have not had my cooking. So do we have a deal? I should have stopped this. As station administrator, I absolutely should have stepped in and reminded everyone about health and safety regulations, proper food handling permits, the liability waivers we would need. But honestly, I really wanted to see where this was going. Besides, Vorkal needed to be taken down several dozen pegs, and if anyone could do it, my money was on the terrifying human grandmother. Vorkal extended one of his 4 hands. We have a deal, Dottie Kowalski of Earth. Prepare your dish. I will consume it tomorrow evening right here in front of all my patrons. And when I do so without even blinking, perhaps you will understand why I am the greatest chef in this sector. They shook on it. While she shook his hand, he sort of enveloped her entire arm in his crystalline grip. The crowd applauded, probably just happy to have some entertainment that did not involve Vorkal talking about himself for 20 minutes straight. That night I granted Dottie access to one of the station's community kitchens. She had arrived on Meridian 7 3 days earlier, apparently visiting her grandson who worked in the engineering section, and she had brought with her roughly 40 kilograms of supplies from Earth. 40 kilograms. I had checked her cargo manifest personally. Spices, dried goods, things with names I could not pronounce, all carefully packed and labeled in her neat handwriting. Word spread fast on a station like ours. By the next morning everyone knew about the challenge. I had crew members asking me if they could attend. Traders rescheduling their departures so they could watch. Someone even started a betting pool which I absolutely did not contribute to. And if anyone tells you I put 50 credits on the human, they are lying. I stopped by the community kitchen around midday to check on things. Standard procedure. Nothing to do with my burning curiosity. Dottie was there, humming something that I later learned was called a show tune, surrounded by more ingredients than I had ever seen in one place outside of a supply depot. "Everything all right, Miss Kowalski?" I asked, trying to peer over her shoulder at what she was preparing. "Oh, just fine, dear," she said, not looking up from where she was chopping something green and pungent. "Just making my special casserole. It is a family recipe. My mother taught me, her mother taught her. Going back 6 generations. Never fails to make an impression." There were jars everywhere. Jars of pickled things. Jars of preserved things. Jars of things that frankly looked like they should not exist in a universe governed by rational physical laws. She had what looked like 3 different types of cheese, none of which I recognized. Some kind of cream in a container that had warnings written in 4 languages. And vegetables. So many vegetables. Onions. Garlic. Something she called ghost peppers, which she handled with thick rubber gloves. And a small bottle labeled simply the hot sauce Aunt Marge made before the incident. I did not ask about the incident. A Zenthuri maintenance worker, a guy named Kel who I played cards with sometimes, stuck his head in the kitchen. "Is it true? A human is going to poison Vorkal?" "I am not poisoning anyone," Dottie called out cheerfully, stirring something in a large ceramic dish that was starting to bubble ominously. "I am simply preparing a traditional Earth comfort food. Very normal. Very safe. My grandchildren eat this all the time." Kel looked at me. I looked at Kel. We both looked at the casserole, which had started making sounds like it was alive and planning something. "Your grandchildren must be terrifying," Kel muttered. By evening, Dottie had finished her preparation. The casserole sat in its dish, covered with foil, radiating heat and an aroma that was simultaneously the most delicious and most threatening thing I had ever smelled. It smelled like comfort and violence had gotten married and decided to throw a dinner party. The crowd at Vorkal's Celestial Palette was the biggest I had ever seen. Standing room only. Species from every corner of the station had crammed in, wanting to witness what was either going to be the greatest upset in culinary history, or just a very expensive meal for an old lady. Vorkal stood at his preparation counter, exoskeleton shimmering with confident gold. Dottie walked in carrying her casserole dish like it was a sacred offering, setting it down gently on the counter. "Ready when you are, chef," she said sweetly. The show was about to begin. The restaurant had transformed into something between a sporting arena and an execution chamber. Patrons were packed shoulder to shoulder, tentacle to appendage, respiratory system to respiratory system. I had given up on enforcing occupancy limits about an hour ago. A group of Krellian engineers had set up a live feed that was broadcasting to at least 6 other sectors. This was no longer just a challenge. This was an event. Vorkal had prepared his station like he was going into surgery. 4 different beverages lined up, each one supposedly capable of cleansing his palate. A stack of pristine white towels sat within reach. He had even changed into a fresh chef's uniform, his exoskeleton polished to a mirror shine, reflecting the overhead lights in brilliant golden flashes. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of all classifications," he announced, spreading his forearms wide like he was conducting an orchestra. "Tonight you will witness culinary history. This brave human has prepared a dish from her homeworld, confident that it will somehow affect my impervious constitution. I applaud her courage, even as I pity her inevitable disappointment." The crowd murmured. A few people clapped. Most just watched, waiting. Dottie stood beside her casserole, hands folded neatly in front of her, looking like someone's sweet grandmother about to serve Sunday dinner. Which, I suppose she was. Sort of. If Sunday dinner was a weapon of mass destruction disguised as comfort food. "Whenever you are ready, chef," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone that human elders use right before they prove you wrong about everything you thought you knew. Vorkal reached for the foil covering with one hand, his other 3 hands posed dramatically. "Let us see what Earth's finest has to offer." He pulled back the foil, and I swear on my ancestors' molted shells, the casserole released a cloud of steam that looked like it had opinions. Strong opinions. The aroma hit the crowd in waves. First came something creamy and rich, then garlic, lots of garlic, enough garlic to qualify as a chemical weapon on some planets. Then came the spices. Oh, the spices. My eyes watered, and I was standing 3 meters away. The casserole itself was a bubbling mass of golden brown perfection. Cheese. At least 3 types from what I could see melted and crusted on top in layers that defied standard physics. Beneath that was a mixture of what appeared to be pasta, some kind of ground protein, vegetables in multiple colors, and a sauce that was the color of a warning label. It is called a 7-alarm funeral casserole, Dottie explained helpfully. My grandmother created it during the food riots of 20. She said if you were going to go out, you should go out with flavor. It has been a family favorite ever since. Food riots? Someone in the crowd whispered. Funeral? Another voice added nervously. Vorkal, to his credit, did not hesitate. He picked up a serving spoon, dug deep into the casserole, and extracted a portion that would have fed a small family. The mixture steamed on his spoon, cheese stretching in long strings, the sauce dripping back into the dish with sounds that were definitely threatening. Smells pleasant enough, he said, his voice confident, but I noticed his exoskeleton had shifted to a neutral blue color. A bit heavy on the aromatic compounds, but nothing my system cannot handle with ease. He brought the spoon to his mouth. The entire restaurant held its breath. Even the environmental system seemed to quiet down, as if the station itself was watching. Vorkal took the bite. For the first 5 seconds, nothing happened. He chewed thoughtfully, his exoskeleton maintaining that neutral blue. He swallowed, smiled, started to open his mouth to declare victory. Then his exoskeleton flashed white. Now, I had been on Meridian 7 for 12 cycles, and I had seen exactly 3 thoraxians turn white. It is not a color they are supposed to turn. It is what happens when their internal regulatory systems completely panic and forget what color they are supposed to be.
Interesting, Vorkal said,
His voice slightly higher than normal. There is a certain warmth to this dish. Quite pleasant, really. Very pleasant. Exceptionally pleasant. He was sweating. I did not know thoraxians could sweat, but there were definitely droplets forming on his crystalline surface. Perhaps another bite, he said, and I could see his hands trembling slightly as he scooped up more casserole. To fully appreciate the complexity of flavors, Dottie said nothing. She just smiled and folded her hands a little tighter. The second bite went down. Vorkal's exoskeleton cycled through 6 colors in 3 seconds. White, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. Then it settled on a color I had never seen before, something between purple and ultraviolet that probably should not exist in normal space. The cheese, he gasped, reaching for his first beverage and downing it in one gulp. What type of cheese is this? Oh, just some cheddar, mozzarella and a special pepper jack my niece makes in Wisconsin, Dottie said cheerfully. The milk comes from cows that are fed a diet heavy in capsaicin-rich feed, makes the cheese naturally spicy. Family secret. Naturally spicy cheese, Vorkal repeated, his voice strained. He reached for the second beverage, drank half of it. Clever, very clever, but not enough to stop me. The third bite was smaller, much smaller. His hands were definitely shaking now. His exoskeleton had started doing something I can only describe as flickering, like a malfunctioning light display. Colors were appearing and disappearing so fast it was making people dizzy just watching him. The sauce, he wheezed. What is in the sauce? Tomatoes, heavy cream, ghost peppers, Carolina Reapers, a few Trinidad scorpions, some Thai chilies I had lying around, and about half a cup of the hot sauce my Aunt Marge made before the incident. Dottie listed off like she was reading a grocery list. Oh, and the special ingredient, horseradish, fresh horseradish, really opens up the sinuses. A phosphine in the crowd fainted, just straight up collapsed. 2 of his friends caught him. Vorkal was now making sounds that I had never heard a thoraxian make. Wheezing, gasping sounds. His exoskeleton was cycling through colors so fast it had become a solid blur. He reached for the third beverage, knocked it over, grabbed the fourth one and poured it directly over his head. I can do this, he muttered, staring at the casserole like it was his mortal enemy. I am Vorkal. I am unpoisonable. He took a 4th bite. That was his mistake. His exoskeleton went completely transparent. I did not know they could do that. Apparently neither did anyone else because the crowd gasped collectively. We could see his internal organs. And let me tell you, they were not happy. Everything inside him was moving in ways that suggested a biological revolution was taking place. What? He gasped, his voice barely a whisper. What is the ground protein? Beef, Dottie said. Nice lean ground beef, browned with onions and garlic. Why? Just beef? Vorkal asked, hope creeping into his voice. Well, and some chorizo for flavor, and Italian sausage for texture, and bacon bits for crunch, and some diced ham I had left over. And Vorkal made a sound like a dying engine and staggered backward. His exoskeleton was now flashing between every color simultaneously, while also being transparent, which created an effect that I am pretty sure violated several laws of physics. Sweat was pouring off him in sheets, his forearms were clutching his midsection, his eyes, usually sharp and focused, had gone completely glassy. He started, then stopped. Tried again. I cannot. The crowd was in uproar. People were cheering, gasping, placing frantic additional bets. The live feed had apparently spread to 12 sectors now. This was going to be talked about for cycles. Vorkal looked at the casserole, looked at Dottie, looked at the crowd. His exoskeleton settled finally on a defeated gray color. I concede, he whispered. Then he collapsed onto the floor in a crystalline heap, conscious but completely immobilized, making small whimpering sounds. The restaurant exploded into chaos. Medical arrived within 4 minutes, which was actually impressive considering they had to push through a crowd of roughly 200 beings all trying to get a better view of the fallen chef, a Krellian medic named Tessa, who I had worked with during the Great Splurch Beetle incident of last month, scanned Vorkal with 3 different devices while shaking her head in what I recognized as professional bewilderment. His vital signs are stable, she announced, loud enough for the crowd to hear. Elevated heart rate, significant inflammation in his digestive tract, and his chemical balance is completely scrambled, but he will live. Whatever he consumed has essentially overwhelmed every single one of his neutralization pathways simultaneously. I have never seen anything like it. Will he be okay? Someone in the crowd asked. Physically, yes. In about 6 to 8 hours his system will have processed everything and he will return to normal functionality, Tessa said, running another scan. Emotionally and psychologically, well, that is not my department. Vorkal was loaded onto a transport gurney, still conscious, still that defeated gray color, staring at the ceiling with the haunted expression of someone who had just had their entire worldview shattered by a 72-year-old woman and a baking dish. As they wheeled him past Dottie, he managed to lift one trembling hand. How? He whispered. How did you do this to me? Dottie patted his crystalline arm gently, the way you might comfort a child who just learned that monsters under the bed were real. Oh, sweetie, it is not about one ingredient. It is about the combination. You see, your biology can handle individual toxins just fine. Your system identifies the threat, neutralizes it, moves on. But my casserole does not work that way. She pulled up a chair, because apparently she was going to give a lecture while the medics prepared to evacuate their patient. The crowd pressed closer, everyone wanting to hear this. First you have the dairy, she continued, ticking points off on her fingers. 3 types of cheese, heavy cream, all proteins your system has to break down. Then you have the carbohydrates from the pasta, which creates a base that slows down your digestion. Then come the spices, not just 1 or 2, but 17 different varieties, each one hitting different receptors, creating a symphony of chemical responses your poor body has to manage simultaneously. Tessa was taking notes. Actually taking notes. A medical professional was documenting this like it was a legitimate scientific breakthrough. The meat proteins add another layer. Dottie went on, clearly enjoying herself now. 5 different types, each with different fat contents and molecular structures. Your system does not know which to prioritize. And the vegetables, the vegetables, onions and garlic contain compounds that interfere with your natural detoxification processes. Not enough to harm you on their own, but combined with everything else, they're like little saboteurs. Vorkal made a small groaning sound. But the real trick, Dottie said, leaning in conspiratorially, and the entire crowd leaned in with her, is the horseradish. You see, horseradish contains allyl isothiocyanate, which is not technically a toxin, so your body does not register it as a threat, but it causes an immediate inflammatory response in mucous membranes, sinuses, throat, digestive tract, everything. So while your system is busy trying to neutralize 17 types of capsaicin, process 5 meat proteins, break down 3 cheese varieties, and manage the sulfur compounds from the alliums, suddenly your entire respiratory and digestive system is staging a protest. That is diabolical, Kel muttered from somewhere in the crowd. That is cooking, dear, Dottie replied sweetly. The art is not in making something poisonous. Any fool can poison someone. The art is in making something that is completely edible, nutritionally sound even. But that creates such a complex cascade of biological responses that even the most resilient system gets overwhelmed. It is like trying to juggle while riding a unicycle while doing calculus. Sure, you can do any one of those things, maybe even two, but all three at once, you are going to fall. The medics finally got Vorkal loaded up and started wheeling him toward the exit. The crowd parted like a sea, everyone watching in respectful silence as the great unpoisonable chef was defeated by comfort food. As they reached the door, Vorkal managed one more question. Why 7-alarm funeral casserole? Dottie smiled. 7 alarms because of the 7 different peppers. Funeral because the first time my grandmother served it, 3 people said they saw their lives flash before their eyes, but they all came back for seconds, so she figured she had a winner. The doors closed behind the medical team. For a moment, the restaurant was completely silent. Then someone started clapping. Then someone else joined in. Within seconds, the entire place was applauding, cheering, whistling in various biological configurations. I made my way through the crowd to Dottie, who was calmly covering her casserole with the foil again. Miss Kowalski, that was the most impressive thing I have seen in my 12 cycles on this station. Oh, it was nothing, she said, waving a hand dismissively. You should see what happens when I make my chili. My grandson still will not talk about Thanksgiving. Over the next few days, the story spread beyond Meridian 7. I got calls from administrators on 6 other stations asking if the rumors were true. The video of Vorkal's defeat had been viewed over 4 million times across the network. Someone had made it into a remix with music. Humans, I learned, found this absolutely hilarious. Vorkal reopened his restaurant a week later. His exoskeleton had returned to normal, though I noticed he never quite got that brilliant golden arrogance back. The color was always a bit muted now, a bit more humble. He had removed the tall hat, changed the restaurant's name to just Vorkal's, dropping the celestial palette bit. And he added a new item to his menu. Right at the top, in letters big enough to see from the corridor, it read, Human Cuisine, approach with respect and caution. We are not responsible for what happens if you challenge the recipes. Dottie visited him once before she left the station, heading back to Earth with her grandson. I happened to be walking past when she stopped by. Vorkal saw her through the window, and his exoskeleton immediately flashed a respectful blue color. He came out, all 4 arms held in a gesture of surrender. Miss Kowalski, he said quietly, I wanted to apologize. I was arrogant, dismissive. You taught me a valuable lesson about humility and the importance of respecting all cuisines regardless of their origin. Dottie smiled and patted his arm again. Apology accepted, dear. You are a talented chef. You just needed to remember that talent and biology are not the same as wisdom. Every culture has something to teach, if you are willing to listen and learn. Will you share the recipe? He asked hopefully. Absolutely not, she said cheerfully. That is 6 generations of family tradition. But I will tell you this. The secret to any good dish is not about overpowering your guests. It is about creating an experience they will remember. Whether that experience involves collapsing on the floor is entirely up to the chef. She left him with a small jar of something she said was her milder salsa, just to show there were no hard feelings. Vorkal later told me he tried exactly 1 spoonful and had to lie down for an hour. The jar sat in a display case in his restaurant with a small plaque that read, a reminder of humility. The Krellian merchants who had witnessed the original confrontation became regulars. They said the food was better now, more thoughtful. Vorkal actually listened to their preferences instead of telling them what they should want to eat. He started incorporating dishes from different cultures, always approaching them with respect and careful research. He never claimed to be unpoisonable again. As for me, I learned something valuable too. Never, ever underestimate a human grandmother. They have survived wars, raised families, and perfected recipes over generations. They have weapons we cannot even begin to understand, hidden in casserole dishes and cookie jars. And they absolutely will use them if you give them a reason. 3 months after the incident, I was doing my regular rounds when I noticed something interesting. The station's cafeteria had added a new section to their menu. Right there between the Krellian nutrient paste and the phosphine radiation snacks was a category labeled Human Comfort Foods. Proceed with caution. They were selling out every single day. Turns out, once word got around about what Dottie had accomplished, everyone wanted to try Earth cuisine. Not the sanitized tourist-friendly versions that usually made it off-world. The real stuff. The grandmother recipe, the family traditions passed down through generations that came with warnings and story. A Zenthuri trader told me he had tried something called gumbo and cried for 20 minutes. Happy tears, he insisted, even though his species did not technically produce tears. A Thoraxian engineer, not Vorkal but one of his cousins, Tried mac and cheese with jalapenos and said it was a religious experience. I even tried some of Dottie's casserole. She had left a small container for me as a thank you for arranging the kitchen access. I took one bite and understood everything. It was delicious. It was overwhelming. It was an assault on every sense I possessed. It was somehow the best thing I had ever eaten. And the most terrifying. That is humans for you. They will pack centuries of survival, love, spite, and determination into a single dish and serve it with a smile. They will take ingredients that should not work together and create something that changes you fundamentally. They will look at the impossible and say, "Hold my casserole," and they will win. Every single time. I filed my incident report that night, documenting everything for the station records. In the section marked Lessons Learned, I wrote just 5 words. Never underestimate human grandmothers. Ever. Best advice I ever gave.